against an adversary that had an effective air defense system, the survival rate of those drones would be minuscule. And so there is a context which allows some of these systems to appear efficient, and you want to be very careful about what you infer from those lessons, right? What was the second question you asked me? I'm sorry about. Oh, on the Chinese. So first, again, I think on this issue more than any other, we don't know what the Chinese lessons are. But I would flag 2 or 3 things based on conversations with Chinese colleagues. And they are all terribly, terribly insightful. The first thing I think they have learned from this conflict is the central importance of sound civil-military relations. That is, you cannot make decisions to go to war if you have a military that's lying to the civilian leadership, or a civilian leadership that fails to appreciate what the military strengths and weaknesses are. I think this is like, sort of lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is that your pre-war assessments of your own capability rarely survive contact with the enemy. And so you have to be extremely prudent before you make big decisions about going to war. And for the Chinese, the specific implication is that if you are going to be engaged in combat in media where you do not have a natural proficiency, or where the adversary has terrific benefits of either geography or so on and so forth, then the decisions about war and peace have to be even more carefully calibrated. You cannot afford to make these decisions on a whim, right? And then I think the third thing that they would pay attention to is simply the importance of operational proficiency, because the Russians turned out to be a paper army. It's a good question to ask whether the PLA, for all the advances in kit that we've seen over the last 20 years, might not suffer the same sorts of disabilities. When have they last fought a modern mechanized war? Forget about an informatized war and an intelligence, whatever the terms of art are, right? So when has the PLA ever engaged in large-scale naval or air operations against even a semi-confident, adversary on the other end? So if anything, I think what the Ukraine conflict has done is that it has, at least in the China-Taiwan context and in the China-US context, actually been extremely an important contribution to deterrence, because it has shown them how complicated war is, how you cannot take things for granted, and how you have to be really careful if you're going up against a competent adversary. And I think that is all to the good from the point of view of stability.
Right. Lauren, do you have a comment on any of your co-panelists' interventions?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to really emphasize that point that Raj made about synergies, and that technology is a tool that needs to be used in a broader context and really integrated and not treated in a vacuum when using it with forces or to use it effectively. I think, from the United States perspective, a lot of the discussion about the U.S. technological leadership and readiness on some of these capabilities, like artificial intelligence in particular, is viewed largely in contrast to Chinese advancements and Chinese statements and their work in these areas and their emphasis that they're placing on emerging technologies. I think the lesson that we're learning from Ukraine and in general is that, despite stated intentions, I think China has argued that it wants an intelligentized PLA that, combines cyber with kinetic warfare that is AI enabled and quantum computing enabled, but that it's really hard to do all of those things at once, and that is going to be the key moving forward.
Thank you. Before I turn to Joshua, take questions. If you hang on. Just if you could just make your way to the nearest mic and just stand there, and I will call on you. Joshua, do you have anything to say, or should I?
Just very, very briefly, I think it's important to remember that Ukraine has fought valiantly and impressively. It has not fought by itself. It has been enabled by a very deep network of partners providing arms and ammunition and intelligence. I mean, as somebody who has some experience with the U.S. defense system, it is just stunning to watch how quickly the United States Defense Department, which does not always move quickly, has been able to scrounge equipment, move equipment to the front lines, and help a partner whose sovereignty was violated. And I think there will be many stories to be told over the coming years that will come out about how the United States and its partners enabled in real time feeding targeting information and other operational and tactical insights to the Ukrainians in a way that enabled them to be their most integrated and operationally effective forces. So that sort of partner story is an important part of the Ukraine story. And also I think as India thinks about the kinds of conflicts it might have, the kinds of friends it might have in those conflicts, and the capabilities that those friends might be willing to bring to bear in terms of equipment and that sort of behind-the-scenes intelligence support, which has proved just vital in this case.
Thank you. The gentleman there, short question. We only have 12 minutes, so really short and pointed,
Hi, good morning. I'm Gaurav. I'm a GTS Young Ambassador from Indian School of Public Policy. My question is to Lieutenant General Raj Shukla. Like, in the past 75 years, we don't have a single national security strategy, and US revises it every year and then. So where are we progressing on that front?
Thank you. I'll take a couple of questions. Is that okay?
So I'm Sanyogita.
If you could, you'll have to speak up, my dear.
So I'm Sanyogita. I'm GTS Young Ambassador representing Kautilya School of Public Policy. So this question comes from a limited understanding of mine. So when we think of technology, we always think unilateral progress or unidirectional progress of technology. But as we were discussing, like how we progress from sort of conventional weapons to nuclear and to cyber. But we see now that we have to go back and strengthen our old technologies or conventional technologies. So do you think that geopolitical compulsions and the agencies involved sort of takes us away from this thought of unidirectional progress?
Do you have that directed against any particular
no,
panelist or anybody?
It.
Okay. Would you like to, Raj, I think there was one question to you. Lauren, would you like to take the second question?
Sure.
Okay. Raj?
I mean, so I would agree with you that we are not as diligent as the Americans are in churning out these strategies, national defense strategy, national security. It would be a very good thing that we do. But yet may I point out that it does not mean that there is an absence of a thought. So, I mean, you have all these services have the biennial Army Commanders Conferences, combined commanders conferences. The last one, the Prime Minister spent 9 hours. The Defense Minister spent 48 hours. So these things are debated. The services know what they wish to do. They are in our heads. They have also evolved into certain plans. And therefore, all these steps have been taken. For example, CDS, DMA, you saw those new normals in our strategic outlook. Atmanirbharta Front, startups, all these things are happening. What the outcomes will tell you that there is thought. There is a certain, I would say, intellectual churn which is on, so that we keep pace with what is happening. Were we to turn it into a strategy document, it would be that much better. I hope I'm not evading that question.